Hello, I'm Nadja Callender, Deputy Chief of Family and Community Partnerships at Houston ISD. Welcome to our second Student Success Town Hall. I'm so glad that you are joining us today. At HISD, we are committed to unlocking the potential of every student by delivering high-quality instruction that helps them succeed. We know that for our students to reach their full potential, they must be learning at grade level. And that is the foundation of everything we're doing. Our goal is to partner with you, our parents, to help our students meet and exceed grade level expectations. To make this partnership work, it's essential that you understand what students are expected to know and achieve at each grade level. Knowing this will help give you a clearer understanding of the key milestones in your child's educational journey and understand how we can work together to ensure their success. Here's the reality. Many parents believe that their children are already performing at or above grade level. But in fact, research conducted by Gallup in partnership with Learning Heroes, a nonprofit that supports family engagement, shows that nearly 9 in 10 parents think that their child is meeting grade level expectation. Unfortunately, this is not the case. In HISD, less than 50% of our students are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations based on state and national testing. As a parent, hearing that statistic made me very curious about how we can better help parents understand what learning on grade level looks like and how it shows up in our classroom. So today, we're going to talk about what instruction looks like in HISD. We're going to zoom in on quality, on grade level curriculum and materials. We'll also explore what it means for students to read at grade level. I'd like to bring in two guests to explain more about how this lesson design and high quality materials can help our students learn and achieve on grade level. I'd like to introduce Paige Zumberg, Executive Director, Curriculum Design, and James Newman, Director 2 of Science, Social Studies, and Art of Thinking Curriculum Design. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Okay, Paige, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
So Paige, can you talk about and really define for us what high quality instruction is and why high quality instruction and curriculum materials are so important?
Right, so everything that we do in our department and in our district is founded on the basis that you mentioned, high quality instruction. And so what is that? It's really defined by the state of Texas and their TEKS. And so what those TEKS are really the standards or the objectives that students should master at each grade level and at each content. And so they publish those, and that really sits at the foundation. So for example, if you have a third grader at home and they're in a math classroom, those TEKS define what your third graders should be doing. And we use those as the basis as what students should be mastering as on grade level. And so that's so important because as students master a third grade concept, they're ready for fourth grade and then beyond, all the way through the whole school system till they're actually ready to get out into the world and they're prepared for college or career or anything else that they want to do with their lives.
Great. So you talked about TEKS. Now I'm sure that those letters stand for something, and I'm sure one of them is Texas, right?
That's right.
So tell me what the TEKS stand for, what that acronym stands for.
Yeah, that's our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills.
Okay. All right. Got it. So talk a little bit about your work in the HISD curriculum department. What do you all do? How does HISD build curriculum, and kind of what does a lesson like or a learning period, what might that look like in HISD?
Yeah, so our department, our goal and vision is for every student to receive on grade level high quality instruction. Okay. So what our department does is we try to support teachers to have the materials they need to make sure every student has access to that. Okay. And so what our team does is we take those TEKS or those standards and we map them out for teachers. And we create those materials like slide decks, our DOLs, our demonstration of learning, which we'll get to here in a minute. Okay. And then even some additional activities for students to do while they're in the class period with their teacher. And so traditionally what you might have seen in a classroom is a teacher would be handed a textbook and say, teach this. And so what our department does is try to ensure that teachers have everything that they need to be the best teacher in front of every student in HISD. And so when we create a slide deck, it's an opportunity for the teacher to make sure they have a clarity of how they're going to teach those TEKS to those students and in which order to best support student learning. And so we do that work for the teacher and really with the teacher through some of our feedback and ways that we work with teachers and leaders to ensure that we have the materials they need. And so some of the things that we produce would be the slide deck, like I mentioned, and that's where the teacher has the content they need, and it also gives them an opportunity to engage students with the teacher and then also with their peers, gives them opportunities to write about what they're learning. And then once the teacher kind of goes through that, students have an opportunity to take a DOL or demonstration of learning, which is like a quiz. And it's got 5 questions on it. And what it does for the teacher is it allows that teacher to really understand, did the student get this content, really master this on-level objective, or do they still need help? And so once the student kind of takes that, the other thing our department creates is LSAE materials. Okay. And so the LSAE materials are really 3 different kinds of assignments, really 4 different types of assignments that students can engage in after that quiz based on how they did. So we kind of take that off the teacher's plate to say, hey, we want to give you some materials that might help your student master that objective that they're supposed to. And so the LSAE.
I was going to ask you what you said. You
so
said
many letters.
4 letters again. Yeah.
So the LSAE is designed to help every kid with wherever they're at. And so we'll start with the L. The L is for our learners. Okay. Our learners are typically the students who they didn't get the objective. They may have only gotten 1 question correct on that mini quiz. So what we provide for the teacher is a way to reteach that content in a way that they weren't taught during the lesson. And so students might be in a smaller group at that time and getting that lesson again in a different way with maybe some more scaffolds or extra images or other things that students can participate in to learn. And then they'll do more of a guided release so that by the time the end of the period happens, the student has mastered the objective. So if they needed more time, they're going to get that more time. Right. And so those S1 students, that's where you get the S from LSAE. Our S1 students are also maybe they only got 2 questions correct or so, and so the teacher may have them stay as well to get that reteach.
And the S stands for?
The S1, it's actually 2 S's, right?
Okay.
The S1 stands for securing.
Okay.
We're still securing our learning about that objective. And then the other 2 assignments that we create in our department is the S2, which is our secured. They've mastered the objective. They've gotten 4 of those 5 questions correct. And so they're ready to continue practicing independently or possibly with a partner that same objective. And then we have our A, which is our advanced learners. They've gotten 5 out of 5 on this quiz, which shows that they've not only mastered the objective, but they've also done number 5, which is typically a more challenging question for the student. Okay. So in that advanced work, they may also work in pairs or independently. They might be doing some analysis of text or something a little more challenging, even dipping into the next grade level to really push them forward in those state objectives that we want them to see that's on grade level and even above grade level. Oh. And then you may have heard an E there at the end. Yeah. And so the E is for our enriched students. Okay. So when a student has already gotten 5 out of 5 on the quiz, they've been doing really great on that accelerated or advanced work, they're ready to jump into enrichment. And so our enrichment really gives, it's created by our department in collaboration with the GT department, our gifted and talented department, okay, to really bridge a cross-curricular connection. So a student might be doing really great in math, they're an A, they got 5 out of 5, they've done their A work, their advanced work, and they're ready to participate in connecting those math concepts to a science concept or a social studies concept. And so they get an opportunity to do some choice. They get to write about it, draw about it, really think about it, and go beyond even just the math classroom now. Okay. And so our department really creates that so the teacher doesn't have to, and they can help your student really access any different part or wherever they're needing to be at the pace they need to.
Wow. Well, that sounds like an army of work.
Absolutely.
Are you guys creating lessons every day, or are they all created? And you know?
We create them every day. So anytime there's instruction happening on a campus, there's something available for teachers and students.
Wow. Yeah. That is really great. James, I want to get you involved here a little bit. So Paige kind of talked to us about taking the state standards and then the purchase curriculum and then the materials that your team creates. Can you talk us through like what a lesson that a teacher might give would look like?
Of course. So we do what every great teacher does. In the state of Texas, we start at the standard, right? We start at the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. We, as a team, break those standards down into manageable, bite-sized chunks. For instance, so coming from the science lens, we have a standard that's about properties of matter.
Okay.
It's a huge standard. It's about density and it's about, conductivity and everything. And so we can't teach that in a day. So what we do, just like, just like a teacher would do, we look at the standard, we break it down into, I need to teach this part one day and this part another day and this part another day to get to mastery of that whole standard. So we do the mapping of that. We write the learning objective where we set up that day's work. So for instance, we'll take, this standard about sedimentary rock formation, for instance, right? So we'll take that and we'll break it down into, on day one, we'll talk about the process of weathering, erosion, deposition, and on the next day we'll talk about the layering of the rocks, and the third day we'll talk about the compaction and the cementation that leads to the rock.
Okay.
So that one standard we've broken into 3 days.
Right.
So once we have that daily objective, we call it the LO or the learning objective, we'll take that and we write those demonstration of learning quizzes, exit tickets, if you will, that Paige mentioned earlier. So those 5 questions will create to lead to mastery on the objective for the day. And so what that could include is, a question that's kind of just do you know the concept?
Right.
And then leading into, questions down, question 3, question 5, they're getting to, can you look at an example and write about this and provide evidence?
Right.
So if they can master that exit ticket for the day, that demonstration of learning, then they've mastered the concept.
Right.
And so what our writers do is we take the learning objective that we've created from the standard, then we create the demonstration of learning.
Right.
And then from there, we then create our slide deck,
Okay.
which in the slide deck we include everything a teacher would need to be successful. The teacher still takes that slide deck and they customize it for their students. They might add sentence stems, or they might do a little bit, well, you know what, this graphic, I have a better one, I'm going to plug that in, or I have a really great video that they didn't include, let me plug that in. So we're creating everything that's needed with the intent that a teacher could take it and do more with it, right? So for instance, in the sedimentary rock formation lesson that I mentioned, we have a graphic organizer, or like a table that has images and student-friendly text, or a space for the students and the teachers to build that idea out together. There might be a video, there might be a hands-on exploration or a teacher demo that they do. And so we build that out into it's the slide deck, but that's really the lesson.
Right.
And then from there, we have a student activity sheet that matches it, that could go into the student notebook, or that could be, that's where the students write and they draw and they interact with the content. That's also editable by the teacher. And then we also create the LSAE, the L, S1, S2, and A components. In our slide decks, we have, after the lesson is finished, the DOL happens, the demonstration of learning happens, the teacher scores it, and then they go into, if my students needed more support, the learners, the securing students, we create a kind of like a mini lesson that's a way for the teachers to reteach whatever was missed. It could be in a different way, it could be pulling in that same graphic from earlier, and then we just do a little bit more work around it. So we create that as well, so the teachers have the support they need to reteach whatever wasn't mastered in the
And so that's what the L students are doing, is they're going to get a little bit more time with the teacher to look at the material again. Tell me a little bit about what the A students are doing.
Okay, so the A students, they've mastered the content and they are able to be independent. So the work that we create for them is, it still has the visuals, it still has it's still on level, it's still aligned to the standard, it's still within that grade level.
Right.
So we're not going beyond and saying, oh, you're ready and now you can go do 8th grade work.
Right.
It's on grade level, but it's just a little bit more challenging, right? So we up the level of complexity of the questions by maybe we make it open-ended and they have to write a claim and provide evidence.
Right.
Or they'll we have a passage, so they have to read and annotate and provide evidence to answer questions from that text that they've read. And so it's more complex, but it's independent work.
Yes, yeah. So James, what I love about what you're describing and what makes a lot of sense to me, and I think is very applicable to the way that other things work, is you kind of begin this process with the end in mind.
Yes.
Right? So you think about the learning objective, you've broken down this massive concept to some smaller concepts, and then you do the quiz, and then you build the support so that the kids kind of have what they need to answer those questions that you're monitoring. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I think a lot of things happen that way. When you said deposition, I thought cop show or lawyer show. So I'm gonna go back and review Sedimentary Rock because I'm like, what is a
We've
deposition?
got a lesson for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the advantages that there, what are the advantages to HISD kind of building out this curriculum on our own, particularly when you think about our students that need more support, might be on an NES campus. Talk a little bit about why that is a good thing.
I was a teacher in Houston ISD for a while, and teachers have resources, and they spend a lot of time digging through to say, I take this because this works for me, and I'll take this if this works for me. We have resources that we've purchased as a campus. We have the textbook, right? So what we do is a lot of that front end work of going through and saying this is aligned and this is rigorous and this matches what we expect students to do. So we're helping the teachers kind of funnel through all of that. And then what we give them, again, is not, if they have something that they found that's a better way to get to their students, then we encourage that. But we set it up so that the teacher's not starting at zero.
Right.
They're starting at, I have these resources that are high quality, that have been put together by very masterful former teachers that we have in the writer role now. And I can start from here and just go that much further,
right?
Because there is only so much time, know, and that's a problem that teachers have always had.
Yeah.
Is I only have X amount of time, so if I could start with these resources already put together, I could spend that same X amount of time just making this great.
Yeah.
You know.
And to add to what James is saying is, some of the design work that we're able to do as a team is we get to look at past data from Houston ISD students and say, okay, we really see that students are struggling with this standard or this objective.
Right.
So how can we build this lesson in a way that's going to be catered to the students in HISD by, really addressing pacing. So maybe we could go slower here. Maybe kids did really well. Let's move a little bit faster and only spend a day here instead. And then in the actual lesson design, we can say, students are struggling with a language skill here, an analysis skill here. Let's add a sentence stem. Let's make sure we have a graphic organizer. Let's put in these supports so that teachers aren't having to do that work, but then also every single student has access to quality. Yeah. They have access points to any weight in the lesson that we can possibly give. And so that if your student has a brand new teacher, that teacher has everything. They have everything they need that, our team has vetted. We've ensured that it's ready for students. And then additionally, we can make changes. If we go with just a box curriculum or a textbook, that's it. That's done. Yeah. And so having this, opportunity to have this fluid curriculum that's specialized for our district and our students is really special because we've got these opportunities for teachers to give us feedback. Hey, this isn't working for our students. Could you consider doing this? We'd love to see more of this. We have those opportunities to have conversations with teachers quite often and with leaders as well. And so it's a really vibrant thing when you go into the classroom and you see every kid has on-level curriculum because it's been designed with the TEKS in mind and with data in mind to know this is what students need, and this is how they're going to get it.
That brings up two things for me. One thing is a very vivid memory of my 10th grade social studies teacher taking us to a section in our book and saying, okay, we're going to cross all of this out, and I'm going to give you some other things. And so this idea, right, that sometimes a textbook is purchased and it is for whatever reason not aligned or not what your teacher or your state standards say it needs to be,
right.
And the lengths that the teacher might have to go through to either bring up the rigor or to make sure that it's more aligned or make sure that it works better for their students. And so I loved to hear that idea. The other thing that I think that I'd like to put a finer point on is, and I think you did it in your opening, but I want to make sure that I mention it here, is we're talking about on grade level materials. And I guess that brings up two things. One thing is, what if my child is behind, right?
Yeah.
And now we're giving them, my child actually doesn't read at a third grade level.
Yeah.
They read at a second grade level. How does giving them third grade materials help them get on grade level?
So that's a great question, and it's really the foundation of the work that we do, is that we base every decision that we make for the students in HISD on research and best practices. And the research really, it does show us that by remediating students, giving them below grade level content actually keeps those students further and further behind, because then there's not time to make up and so to that current grade level. And so it is the right practice for kids to give them on grade level instruction and then customize that to continue accelerating them,
right.
But customize that to give them the additional support they might need right at the right time.
Right.
And so by creating those materials in our department, we're able to kind of identify,
right.
hey, if a student's not on grade level here, what extra support can we put in this slide deck or in the student activity? Or when that teacher might get to the reteach, what might we do so that student can be accelerated to be on the third grade level? Because the more we hold them back, the further and further behind they'll fall, and that's not what we want for our
right.
kids. And so that's a great question, and I think for parents who have students who are behind grade level, trusting that your teacher is teaching on grade level and then supporting them at home as well with on grade level materials is really the best thing for students.
Yeah, I think it was probably Maya Angelou, but someone always said people rise to their highest expectations. So what role, and I think we've talked about this a little bit, so but what role does this curriculum piece play in improving the quality of instruction and student outcomes?
I think what we've kind of discussed already is that we're setting the foundation for every student to have access to quality instruction, right? An example is yesterday, we go out to campuses a lot. We get a lot of feedback from teachers and from leaders, and so we're constantly evolving in the work that we do. And so yesterday I spent time at a campus in a classroom that it was phenomenal. It was great. Students were engaged, the teacher was excited, they were moving, it was alive. And then walking out of the classroom, debriefing with the leadership team, they said, that's a first-year teacher. And so I was a first-year teacher, and it didn't look like that. And so just that, to me, is the biggest thing that we're doing, is that we're creating the resource for high-quality instruction to happen
Right.
Across the board. So there's not a I'm doing great here in this class, and my counterpart is really struggling. Every student is getting a kind of a really strong baseline
right.
of that high quality.
Yeah.
And any teacher and any leader in HISD has access to that.
Yeah.
And so whether or not that campus, is using this curriculum or that curriculum, if there's hey, I really need a resource for this, it's there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So any kid can have access to it if the teacher is using the curriculum.
Exactly.
Well, this has been really great. I earlier had an opportunity to meet with some of your colleagues, and I had the chance to speak to Carolina Moore, who's the director of elementary curriculum for ELA, which is English language arts.
Yeah.
English language arts. There you go. I was going to say acquisition. And she got to tell us a little bit about high quality materials and what they look like in action and what it means for students to read, or elementary students to read on grade level. So let's take a look at that. I wanted to kind of know and understand the differences between kind of what a student should be able to do in the first grade versus the third grade versus the fifth grade. And it looks like you've pulled some things together for us. Can you just show us a little bit and talk to us a little bit about what our first grade reader might be able to do? Like, how will I know if my first grader is on track on grade level?
Of course. So for the first grade level, you think about Dr. Seuss books, like the Cat the Pit series, the Seabiscuit series for first grade. So at this level, the student should be able to learn. They are learning how to read.
Right.
So for that step, they need to understand, identify all sounds. They need to understand all the different combinations with the vowel teams. So they are able to start reading sounds to make words then, so they can able to read a whole sentence.
Okay.
So this is kind of like a book that we do have for our first graders, where they're able to identify during a class. You're going to be able to read that specific word, so they will be able to identify the sound, repeat it, practice. So at home, when you do have this kind of books, it's essential that you are practicing those foundational skills, just to make sure that the student is able to expose, read, and practice every day.
Okay.
So when we are at first grade level, they are learning how to read, and it's essential that all these skills, like the vowel teams, like I mentioned, get to practice every day. But
Okay.
when we're looking into and moving into a third grade, for example, so the students have moved on from all those foundational skills, right? So we're closing the gap. You're learning how to read in third grade. You're learning how to comprehend and understand, because you had focused from K to 2 to learn how to read. So when we're looking at books at home, for example, like the I Survived series, thinking about Charlotte's Web, for example, one of my favorites.
Charlotte's Web.
Exactly. So then we're looking into building that comprehension, right? And so the more you are already kind of not focusing too much into getting all those words together, your brain is going to be able to focus more on the comprehension, understanding the story. What is it that I'm going to be learning today? Or at home, what is my kid learning from what they are reading, right? So am I able to comprehend what I'm reading? You can notice too that the fonts, right? So you're getting more of the content, more of the words, complexity on that. Academic vocabulary is increasing. And of course, when you move to fifth grade, you're going to find books like I have here, The Boy Who Met the Whale. Esperanza Rising is one of the other examples for when you have books at home. And it's more about that complexity of the text. You're building knowledge. So you're moving from learning all the different sounds, vowel by vowel, putting it all together, getting to comprehension, to now moving into more of a complexity text, because then I'm going to move into middle school and I need to be exposed to all different kind of texts, like poetry, informational, fiction, moving into that secondary.
So as a parent, right, if I have my first grader, what are one of the things that you're suggesting that I do with my first grader at home? So should I show them a Dr. Seuss book and see if they can read it to me, or should I be reading to them?
So as a first grade, I think it's a combination of both. It's very important when you know and understand, like, if my child is recognizing all the sounds, is recognizing making putting all those together and making words and sentences. So if you know that your child is already doing that, then they can definitely move into being more independent and looking at those. If you notice that your child is not able to do that, then it's essential that as a parent, you model for them how you pronounce that. what kind of sound is that making? They repeat. So it's essential that that repetition occurs all the time. So if you identify that your child is not able to do that, it will be important that you read with your child at home together, and then you practice and they get to do it too.
Now, I have seen where sometimes people tell you to have your child read for 20 minutes. But at the first grade age, is it okay if I'm reading for 20 minutes with my child, if I'm doing the reading?
So it's important, like I mentioned, that you get the student, your kid get to practice. So it is important too that they listen, because we're developing listening comprehension. So there will be something like what we have in our resources available. So it's important that if you want to develop comprehension, you could have a text that could be a little bit above more grade level, so your child is able to listen to that, is able to develop more comprehension. So I do have some cards in here. So some of the things that the child is able to do at school, when they are looking and developing more comprehension, the teacher is able to do read alouds. It's more complex text. So when they are doing this, they are developing knowledge building, academic vocabulary. They're able to understand and learn about their world, what we lived in. But if we want the student then to be able to get practice, then is this type of text, like I mentioned before, where we do have different patterns to learn. So if I'm learning about the vowel sounds and that day I'm able to get that practice. So as a parent for 20 minutes, it will depend on what kind of text you're reading. Because if you're going to be reading a text where you're just practicing word sounds for 20 minutes, if you want to develop that comprehension, it will be a combination of a text that might be a little bit above grade level, so they can develop that knowledge building and that content, academic vocabulary. But if you want them to practice individual sounds, it will be text that will have those independent sounds.
That is really exciting and interesting. And so the connection that I'm making is it really depends on what skill my child is trying to build, or what skill I'm trying to help my child build, as to whether I do the reading and we read something that might be a little bit above their grade level or might be a little bit complex. And those are times when I can read, and then they're really building their vocabulary.
Correct.
And they're building their comprehension, and they're understanding, listening to how words sound and are being pronounced. But then if it's things that they need to practice, like, for example, you mentioned the vowel pairings, that we would want them to be doing the practice.
Correct, because the objective is we want them to learn how to read on our basic grades, that is kinder to second.
Right.
This is when you're building those foundational skills, meaning you're going to be practicing all the different spelling patterns, vowel patterns, that is going to help you to decode those words, and it will be easier on the comprehension when you're moving to a third grade and upper grades.
So you use the word comprehension. Comprehension just means understanding what I'm reading, right?
Correct.
And so being able to read and not have to stop, but being able to read and understand and know all the vocabulary is helping me build my comprehension.
And your fluency.
And my fluency.
Correct.
Okay, and so fluency is what?
So when we're looking at fluency, is you're able to read a text that is not impeding with your comprehension. So you're fluently reading a text without focusing too much on, okay, I'm trying to blend these two letters, or I'm trying to identify what word does it say here. So my fluency will be, I should be able to blend or decode, or I understand how to recognize that word, and just moving on into it. And so I will be able to have a better comprehension. So my fluency will help me with the comprehension.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking us through this. We are excited to be able to share with our parents a little more about comprehension, fluency, and all of the different pieces that contribute to on-grade level reading. Thank you so much, Carolina. So Carolina really explained it great for our elementary school students, but I also got a breakdown of what high-quality instructional materials look like at the middle and high school level. And so I spoke to Sarah Race, and Sarah is our Director for Curriculum Design for secondary ELA, which is English Language Arts, and got to get some book recommendations and other things from Sarah. So let's check that out. One of the things that I thought would be really interesting is for you to tell us a little bit about what on-grade level texts are and what they look like for middle and high school students.
Great. So for middle school and high school students, examples of on-grade level reading would be short stories with complex plots, such as Dark They Were and Goldeneye by Ray Bradbury. On-grade level text will look like articles, both informational and nonfiction. We have these two from Newsella, from articles about exploration robots on Mars and opinions about Mars colonization. And other types of text would be poetry and also novels such as Stargirl, Esperanza Rising, Hatchet. There's a young reader's edition of I Am Malala that's also a great read for middle and high school students.
Okay, wonderful. So when you talk about some of these things, and we know that our elementary school students are reading a lot of the same types of texts, right? Like they're also reading novels, they're also reading sometimes articles. So what's the difference between what a high school student might be reading? It's the same sort of text, but what's the difference, right, between a high school student and maybe a middle school or elementary school student?
Right. Well, first of all, if you look at the text, it may be a little bit more complex in the way that the story is told or the way the text is written. So you may see more complex language, but really one of the biggest differences you'll see is the types of topics that they cover. So in middle school, and definitely as we get toward upper middle school and high school, you're going to see that the topics of the text are going to be a lot of real world content that is a little bit more grade appropriate or age level appropriate. So they may be introduced to characters or scenarios with students and individuals that are their own age or older.
Okay, so, great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and for helping us kind of close the gap. It's been so helpful to hear this discussion about the materials and the processes that HISD is using to ensure that our students are able to learn and achieve on their grade level. Paige, one more question for you. How can parents learn more about our unique curriculum, get involved more with their children's education and in the instruction piece with their children?
Yeah, absolutely. Our parents can first and foremost talk to their students' teachers. That's the best way to be informed about how your student's doing and what they're learning in the curriculum. Is to just connect with them, ask them questions, and even some questions I might pose are, hey, what's my student reading in your class right now? Can we read that at home together? Maybe even if they're really curious about that data you showed earlier about proficiency is, how did my student do on the NWEA MAP exam? Okay. That might help them understand exactly where their proficiency is as well. And so any of those types of questions and really talking to teachers would be great. And I think another resource that parents have access to is if they want to get access to those TEKS we've been talking about, really know what's in scope for my third grade student in math and English and science and social studies, can go to that TEA website and look at those standards right there. And they've even got some novel suggestions and some other resources that they can have access to with their student at home.
James, any questions you can think of that we ought to ask our child's teacher, or other things we ought to look at to kind of get more engaged in the process?
Yeah, I think, so I'm a parent of two HISD students. They're in middle school and high school, so it's harder to get things out of them now than it used to be. But I think what Paige said is making sure that you're connected to the teacher, and not harassing the teacher, not asking them every day, what are y'all doing, but just kind of getting that big picture of like, hey, what's coming up? What should my student know right now? How should they be able to read? If I if I find a book that I think they would like, I could talk to their English teacher and say, is this something that they should be reading, or is this too advanced, or is this too low? Just to make sure that, I mean, I think that's the partnership that's going to make all of this work is with the teacher,
Right.
definitely. And then just asking those questions too, like, based on data, where is my student? Because the report card should show that, but maybe it doesn't show the whole picture. And so, like, what I know they did, a beginning of year assessment. What is that? Where was my child at that moment, and what can I do to help?
What can I do at home to help,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
we understand that.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank Carolina, Sarah, James, and Paige for sharing your work with us. I think it's been a really wonderful time visiting with you, and I look forward to us doing this again. I think we ought to talk about math. We've talked about
Yes.
reading and science, so we should talk about that. My kind of final 4 learnings from this discussion are these. As a parent, communicating with your children's teacher is the very best way to know if your child is on grade level. Teachers can also help you to understand how to best support learning. We do assessments. We have the DOL, but we also have assessments like the NWEA MAP test. And that has already happened beginning of the year. The students are about to take middle of the year. Those assessments can help you understand your child's progress versus other students. It goes beyond the grades on their report card. As a parent, we don't have to have the answers. We don't have to have the fix to help our children, but we can ask the questions. We can be consistent with our support and with our advocacy. So as James mentioned, we're not suggesting that you harass the teacher, but certainly ask those questions and figure out how you can help. For more information about how to have conversations with your child's teacher, or to understand more about what on-grade level looks like, you can certainly tap resources from the HISD Family and Community Engagement Department through our website, or you can go to nonprofits like Learning Heroes. They have a program called Readiness Roadmap, and it has little guides that will share with you what on-grade level looks like for 1st through 7th grade. And they also have prompts for how to have conversations with teachers. So I encourage you to look at both of those resources. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and have a great one.